On the desk today, we have two premium German-made fountain pens, which share a lot of similarities, but also have some important differences. First up, we have the Pelikan M800. This first debuted in 1987 at the Frankfurt Spring Fair, and at the time it was Pelikan's largest model, which was later dwarfed by the M1000, and that one was released about 10 years later in 1997. And below that, we have the Montblanc 146. This one was released in 1948 originally, and it has gone through some fairly significant changes over the years. It was released as part of the 140 series alongside the smaller 142 and 144, and at the time it was Montblanc's largest fountain pen, which was later dwarfed by the M1000, and that came out in 1952. In terms of MSRPs, they're very similar. The M800 goes for about $840 as a recommended retail price, but you can find it at significant discounts, and it's also widely available at many retailers. The Montblanc, on the other hand, has a recommended retail price of $850, so about $10 more than the M800. And this one is a bit more of an exclusive product. You typically don't see it on many retailers, except for those that are certified to sell Montblanc. In terms of colors and variations, the M800 has a wide variety of standard colors. You can get it in a striped version, which is typically available in blue, green, red, or gray. And then you can also get it in the opaque version, which is what I have here today. It's currently available either in black or blue with white accents. Another important thing to note about the M800 is it's offered with two different trims. You can either get it in gold or the silver trim, which is what I have here today. The silver trim is designated as an 805 model. And then the offerings for the 146 are much more limited. You can only get it in a solid black finish, which is what we have here today. You can purchase it with either silver or gold accents. But Montblanc also creates limited release editions that are based off of this model, and those typically honor authors, composers, and novels. In terms of overall shape, the M800 has a modern cylindrical shape that has flat top and bottom finials, and it has a step going down from the cap, and then also another one going down to the piston knob. In contrast, the Montblanc 146 has a classic cigar-shaped profile with rounded top and bottom finials. In terms of finial design, the Pelikan features their logo at the top, which is a mother pelican feeding her baby chick. It has changed over the years. This one is one that predates 2010. In 2010, they updated this finial to be a metal piece with a laser engraving. This one is silk screened on. And then for the Montblanc, you have the iconic white star finial. This is a bit of a status symbol, and it does symbolize the snow-capped glaciers on top of Montblanc Mountain. In terms of overall length, the Montblanc is just a little bit longer. It comes in at 144 millimeters when it's capped, whereas the Pelikan comes in at 141 millimeters. In order to remove the cap, they both unscrew. The Pelikan has a cap that comes off in exactly one turn, and the Montblanc's comes off in 1.5 turns. In terms of nibs, they're both very similar in overall size. The Pelikan either comes with a two-tone nib, which is what we have here today, or an all-silver nib if you have a modern M805. And the Montblanc is only available in a two-tone nib. The Montblanc is a 14-karat gold nib, and the Pelikan has an 18-karat gold nib, so a little bit higher gold content. In terms of available tipping sizes, the Pelikan I currently have here in a broad, but you can get it in extra fine, fine, medium, broad, double broad, or an italic broad. And for the Montblanc, you can get it in extra fine, fine, medium, which is what I have here today, broad, double broad, oblique broad, or oblique double broad. If you want to remove the nibs for cleaning and maintenance, the Pelikan is pretty straightforward. You grab the nib and feed and give it a counterclockwise turn. and that will come out. It is held together with this metal band, and I haven't found an easy way to loosen it. So for cleaning this unit, I typically run it under warm water or maybe soak it with a little bit of mild detergent. And then for the barrel, if you want to not remove the piston unit, you can simply take a syringe and flush water in and out. For the Montblanc, it is a little bit more involved. If you look closely, there are 2 slits at the bottom of the nib unit. You need a special tool. I purchased this. This is a Mahjong P136 disassembly tool. It is a 2-sided tool with a smaller slot here for the nib and this back slot for the piston unit. And they both have these little prongs that come out of it. So you attach the prongs to the nib unit and then you give it a counterclockwise turn. Soon you can unscrew that from the barrel. Again, if you don't want to disassemble the piston unit, just flush this with a simple syringe. And then for the nib unit itself, it is held in this nib collar. If you want, you can grab it with your gripping materials. You want to grab the sides of the nib and not the feed because you could deform the feed, and then you just pull it straight out. And the nib and feed separate just like that for easy cleaning. Let me go ahead and put this back together real fast. And then we'll screw it back into our grip section. And to make sure that it's secure, we'll again use our tool. In terms of the grip sections, they're fairly similar. The Pelikan does start with a metal band, which is great to see because it does provide a little bit of extra protection from cracking. However, I will note that if you look at secondhand markets for the Pelikan M800, you will see quite a few metal bands that are kind of corroded, whereas the Montblanc just has a plastic end to its grip section. Both of the grip sections are kind of hourglass in shape with a flare-up followed by a taper to threads. The Pelikan has a little bit of a more narrow grip section, which goes down to 10 millimeters, and the overall length is a little bit shorter than the Montblanc. Its overall length is 10 millimeters. In contrast, the Montblanc's narrowest portion is 11 millimeters, so 1 millimeter thicker, and 17 millimeters long, so 2 millimeters longer overall to the threads. Both of the threads are smooth to the touch, and then we have the ink windows. The Pelikan has a solid block ink window, which is tinted green. It's a very functional ink window, but because it is tinted green, it's hard to tell what your ink color is before you write with the pen. And then the Montblanc has a series of slits that act as an ink window, and they are clear, so they're not only functional, but you can also tell your ink color without writing with the pen. And then in terms of overall length, when it's uncapped, the Pelikan comes in at 127 millimeters, and the Montblanc is just a little bit shorter in this form at 125. In terms of how the pistons function, they're both extremely smooth. Now with the Pelikan, I find the piston feels like it's engaged with the piston knob the entire time going down. So it's a nice, smooth operation. But then to come back up, I can feel about a half turn before it starts engaging that piston rod again. And for the Montblanc, it's actually the opposite. I feel about 3/4 of a turn when I start off before the piston rod gets engaged with the piston knob. And then again, it is very smooth all the way down, and going back up, it is feeling engaged the entire time. In terms of overall ink capacity, I am going to test this when we fill them up, but they're advertised as 1.35 milliliters for the Pelikan, and anywhere between 1.3 and 1.7 for the Montblanc. In terms of balance, the Pelikan feels extremely comfortable in the hand. It has nice heft thanks to the piston unit, and a comfortable length to use for both short notes and long writing sessions. When it's uncapped, it is 20 grams. And if you do decide to post the cap, it posts securely and deeply. It does not post on the piston knob, thanks to that step down that we see between the barrel and the knob. And you can certainly write with it posted. It feels very comfortable in this form. It doesn't really alter the balance much, and the overall weight is 28 grams. And then for the Montblanc, it is a little bit of a shorter pen in the hand compared to the Pelikan, but it's again very well balanced. It has good heft at 15 grams, so it's a little bit lighter in the hand compared to the Pelikan. You could either consider that a negative because the Pelikan feels a little bit more premium, but personally, I find this a little more comfortable for long-term writing. And then the cap also posts deeply and securely. It does not post on the piston knob, so you don't risk actuating that piston. And it does add a little bit of extra heft at 25 grams, but again, it's very well balanced. For me with medium-sized hands, it fits right inside the crook of my hand. And while we have this posted, let's go ahead and take a look at overall length. For the Pelikan, it comes in at 165 millimeters posted, and the Montblanc is a bit shorter at 146 millimeters, which is kind of cool because that matches the model number. In terms of disassembling the piston unit, let's go ahead and unscrew the back piston knob for the Pelikan. Unscrewing that reveals two flats, and we can grab a hold of that with a series of different tools. I personally found this Twisby wrench fits it just about perfectly. We will insert that into the flats, screw it down, and then give it a clockwise turn. If that sounds familiar, it's because this piston unit that Pelikan developed has been widely adopted by the fountain pen market, with a few notable exceptions. Spoiler alert, one of them is Montblanc. That entire thing comes out. You can see that it is held inside this metal connector piece. I'm not going to disassemble this further. If you want to see the full disassembly of it, go ahead and check the full review. And it just takes a counterclockwise screw down. I like turning with the barrel instead of the wrench in order to avoid over torquing and possibly cracking the acrylic. And then for the Montblanc, we're going to unscrew this back piston knob, and you'll see that there are no flats on those threads, but instead we see two little slits similar to what we saw on the nib unit. We'll grab our tool, insert this down onto those slots, and then tighten it further down with the piston knob. And then this takes a counterclockwise turn to remove, which is opposite of Pelikan as well as most fountain pens. I believe Montblanc most likely applies some glue to these threads to help hold it in place, because if you don't have this fully tightened down, you'll find that the piston unit will tend to unscrew itself while you're trying to fill up the pen. And there you can see it is a little bit different compared to the Pelikan. The piston has internal threads which mesh with a screw that's attached to the knob. And then this takes a clockwise turn to tighten back down into the barrel. And I'm going to apply a little bit of extra torque in order to avoid it unscrewing on itself. Okay, let's go ahead and ink up these pens. Today, I selected Waterman Serenity Blue, which is a beautiful, well-saturated blue ink, and it's very easy to maintain in both modern and vintage fountain pens. I'll take the cap off the bottle. And before we ink it up, I'm going to start off with the Pelikan. Let's get a weight for it when it is uninked. I'm going to go ahead and zero that so we can see how much ink we actually pull into the pen. We'll put the pen into the bottle. I'm going to just submerge it so it covers the grip section in the ink. We'll unscrew the piston knob. and then screw it back up. And for a good measure, I'm going to expel the ink and then draw it up one more time. That helps remove any excess air that was in the feed prior to pulling ink into the body. This isn't a super fill, but I think this is what most people will do when they're filling up their pen. Let me go ahead and wipe off our nib unit and grip section. Cap up our pen. And we ended up adding 1.36 grams, which translates to 1.36 milliliters. And it was advertised at 1.35, so that means we got a really good full fill. Let's take a look at the ink window while we have it. You can see that it is now fully opaque. And then let's go ahead and do the same with Montblanc. I'm gonna zero it out, place the pen in. So that's emptied. And we'll see how much we can get into this pen. Again, putting the pen down so that just the top of the grip section is submerged. Unscrew the piston knob, screw it back up. And then I'm going to, again, expel the ink and then draw it up one more time just to help push out any excess air. Wipe off the nib and grip section. Again, those ink windows made this pen appear fully opaque. If you do have less ink in the pen, you would be able to slosh it around and be able to tell what your ink color is. Cap this up. And it does hold a bit more than the Pelikan with a standard fill. I'm getting 1.63 milliliters. For our writing sample today, I'm going to start with the Pelikan. And today we're writing with a broad 18 karat gold nib. And it is a beautifully tuned nib. It's smooth, it's wet, it has a unique grind with this broad size. It almost gives like a stub-like characteristic. Also, if you listen closely, you can hear this nib sing, and that's a phenomenon where the tines vibrate as you write, and it makes a little bit of an audible noise. In terms of feedback, I would say it is moderate. It feels a bit smoother than a number 2 pencil. For our ink, today we have one from Waterman. And it's called Serenity Blue. And then for flex, I'm going to start off with no pressure. And then adding some pressure. You can get the tines to open up a little bit and provide more ink flow, but it's by no means a flex nib. And then let's go ahead and check this out compared to the Montblanc. And this one is a 14 karat gold medium nib. So it's not quite apples to apples, but I did want to give you a sense for how these two pens perform. I do have a few Pelikans with medium-sized nibs, and those are a bit more rounded, similar to the Montblanc. But the polish and the audible sound is common throughout all of my Pelikan pens. Again, this is a 14 karat gold nib. This one is also expertly tuned. It's very wet and very smooth. I would say that this one is polished to a greater extent compared to the Pelikan. Our ink is the same. And then for flex, it's no change and some width pressure. So yep, you can push out a bit of line variation as well with this, but again, it's by no means a flex pen. So for me, both of these pens are very much Grail-worthy pens, and why would you pick one over the other? Well, for me, I would pick the Pelikan if I want one that has more heft, that's easier to clean, disassemble, and maintain. It has a nib that has a higher gold content, so in that respect, it's a little bit more bang for your buck. And then also the overall design of this is a bit more modern with those flat edges and kind of cylindrical shape. And it's available in a wide variety of colors as standard finishes. But you may also lean towards the Montblanc if you want more of a classic looking fountain pen that's honestly a bit of a status symbol with this white star at the top. And then in terms of overall weight, yes, the Montblanc is a little bit lighter than the Pelikan, which maybe will come off as lesser perceived quality. But personally, I prefer it for longer writing sessions because it has more of a tendency to disappear in my hand. And then in terms of the nib, I find that this one is polished to a greater extent compared to the Pelikan, and it's also offered in a larger variety of nib tipping sizes. But naturally, you could also easily take either of these pens to a Nibmeister and have it ground to your own specification. So I hope this head-to-head shootout between these two fantastic models has been informative, and I just want to say thank you for watching.